Can you hear me now?
I can't. Let me move my mic closer. Hey,
What's cracking, man?
is my sound good?
Your
Making
sound,
sure for the stream.
your sound is great.
All right, good. I was just about to do some. I was planning to do some like major writing for tonight, and I was like, I was opening up the doc, about to start talking about penal labor, and then you're like, do you want to talk about it? I'm like, sure.
Rock and roll.
Okay.
Let me pull my camera up. I'm gonna do my switcheroo real quick. Main, and then I'm gonna go. Oh wait, I can't do that. Oh yeah, I gotta get another camera. I keep forgetting. I want to have two.
I have two cheap ones, so that's like my advantage, as opposed to one really expensive one.
Yeah, I think I might have been better off getting two less expensive ones just for the fact that then I could kind of mess with my angles a little bit and
Yeah.
wouldn't have to switch the shit
I
back
like
and
having
forth.
two just so I can simultaneously have my image on Discord and on stream.
Yeah, it looks good too. I've seen yours. It looks clean.
It's nice because my Discord camera has a green tint to it, but because I use a green screen, it basically goes away.
Oh, nice.
All right. I was just about to start doing some writing. Oh, also, I feel so pissed because I I think I told you about this a while back. I went to have a debate or a conversation slash debate with Fabian Liberty.
Yeah.
And I just realized because this is whenever I fucking debate libertarians, they love playing these goddamn word games.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's exactly what they do.
Uh-huh. So I just realized because I was looking into a few of the words that they defined words incorrectly again, and because I'm nice, I always decide to go with their definitions, but they always I need to like work on that because he mixed up my definitions between monopoly and monopsony, and I was like, oh fuck. They had him on that point, and I let him get away because of it.
That's like usually how it goes down with guys like that though. They're very crafty
Mm-hmm.
with their rhetoric and their words and they'll say shit really quick and then it's like you don't have time to sit there and look everything up on the spot. You know what I'm saying? So it's like sometimes you
Mm-hmm.
do, but more often than not, you kind of have to just roll with it and be able to know your shit.
I need to like I don't know if it's like a good I don't think it's a good faith thing. But whenever I'm having those kind of conversations, I need to get used to like looking up the specific words and how they use them. Because a lot of them act like they're like progressive in a social way, you know?
Right.
But a lot of them like really aren't.
No, no, not at all. No, it's a they're kind of always playing all sides of the coin. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Because it's
Yeah.
more about that like with stuff like that, especially with like anarchism and shit like that, like it's just about breaking shit up. So they can take different positions that like more static people couldn't
Mm.
because there isn't like it's essentially we've kind of touched on it before, but it's essentially freaking the rich are still in control. As a matter of fact, more so. It's like another frame for like a fiefdom or some shit like that.
Mhm. It's so annoying. I'm just upset that I fell for it again because I had gone through a bunch of libertarian debates before this, and I knew that's what he was going to try and do. And for some reason, I let him get away with it again, and it makes me upset.
So walk it back and tell us what happened. How did he get you? Like explain the context.
He just like mixed up the definition between a monopoly and a monopsony. So, and I just remembered it because I was looking into like the difference for writing today because I have a whole section on it. And apparently, because it had been a while since I like looked at the specific definition of monopsony,
Mm-hmm.
it's specifically related to the buyers. So as opposed to because he had it where the definition is a monopoly is a like a smaller version of monopoly essentially. It's not everything, but it's what I was referring to. While in reality, a monopsony is just the buying version of a monopoly.
Yeah,
And
it's somebody who hoards the resources.
yeah, and I don't know why it was like 10 p.m. and I was like late, and I let them get away with it because libertarians love making out the idea that a monopoly is 100%. You have to own like every single uh, business in order, and there can be zero competition. When in reality, that's not what it is at all.
Yeah,
It just
no.
looks like that in the dictionary definition, so they got to play around with it. And I let him do it, and I'm like so pissed.
Well, it's that's the thing though. Was it both of them though? Was there two of them?
Well, the thing is that like we were briefly talking about because like they believe the solution to every monopoly is not just letting competition do its own thing, right? Because that's always worked in every time, right?
Right.
And he like managed to mix. I don't know why, but I just wasn't focused at the time. He mixed me up on the differences between the two, and it was just annoying because he was able to get off his point better, and I was just like slightly pissed off by it. It's not a big deal though. It wasn't like the focus of the conversation. I
Yeah.
just like I need to like because I'm you can like confirm or deny this. I find that libertarians have a very hard time getting big on platforms.
Yeah, I think it's because their ideas are hard to swallow for a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people because if you're not rich, like the concept of libertarianism doesn't really work, at least not in its current framework, not in the framework that
Mm-hmm.
the Koch brothers and the people who are really backing that movement
Yeah,
are framing it, you know. Libertarian from a social perspective is great, you know. I mean,
supposedly.
but but in terms of economics, like I don't, I think it's a great social movement. I think it's a horrible economic movement. I'll put it that way.
Hmm. I absolutely agree with that. It's just like what I've been finding is I've been running into a lot of libertarians because I think I'm going to run into a lot more of them when I'm in the smaller phases of streaming.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that there's a large amount of them at the bottom because they have a pretty hard time getting up to the top. For example, I was talking with Fabian Liberty. He's the biggest ANCAP channel, and when I talked to him, he had just under 200 followers. So it's
Oh
kind of
wow.
surprising. So I mean, it's not nothing against him and his growth. Obviously, I'm sure he's doing like far as his streaming goes. I'm sure he's like working pretty hard, but it's just surprising to see that. I have a feeling that I'm gonna be running into a lot of them at the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, I think that also a lot of these folks, their main audience may not be on this platform. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like
Yeah.
they might either stream through a separate website as well, or through YouTube or something else, and that might be where they're getting more of their attention. You know, maybe they do a lot of uh, you know, video on demand stuff where they, you know, clip out their best takes or some shit like that. You know.
Yeah, that could be true. It's just I'm. I think I can handle it from now on. I think I just need to like be ready for these libertarian tricks. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they seem like they're always the same thing, and I'm a little bit too trusting with them. I guess. I feel like, and you saw when I was on Hans's panel last week. I think I did pretty well against the libertarians in that panel, like Pan and stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, you did great. Um, I thought you held your own real well, illustrated your points. I mean, I was already on your side because I knew what you were going for. So I was like, yeah, go Sin. So no, I thought you did wonderful.
So I think I'm getting better. And honestly, I almost feel bad for libertarians in a sense because I think they get lost on panels a lot. Um, I can't imagine if it was my ideology, which it's not, and it will never be because they're stupid. But I can't imagine if I was like trying to stick out, and I have positions all over the field, and I'm going on a panel, and I have to defend a whole bunch of stuff, and I'm going to agree with some people and others and not. But if you know what I mean. Like I feel like Pan doesn't really get the chance to be a libertarian on the panels.
Yeah, and yeah, he's got an interesting perspective because I can see where he's there's some areas where I can really agree with him, and there's a lot that I absolutely don't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
I actually thought
I think
Pan
that's
took
what's
like
interesting. What's that?
I actually thought Pan took a really smart approach on the Hans panel that we were on, because he was like zeroing in on regulations that lefties also don't like. So I think that was a really smart decision to go with.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I agree with that. He
But
usually tries to find a couple points where he can have an agreement, and then he tries to like work you over to his side from there because he's like, oh, we found a middle ground right here. And
yeah.
it's like, no, I agree with you on that, but also, you know,
Anyway, let's talk about this document.
what's that?
Let's talk about the document. I'm currently setting up my stream stuff so I can come on here, so I can like have my visual up. Here. Let me. If I ever, I was sounding like a little bit far away because I'm trying to have all my lights set up so I can actually come on. This should do it. There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. Hello.
All right, all right, all right.
Okay. I have the document pulled up. Uh, yeah. Let's talk about it a little bit. So how much of it did you read through? I guess.
Let me pull it back up. Shit. Where are my messages? Get out of here. I'm high as shit.
I was planning to like stay up all night and try and knock out the prison section tonight. I think I can still do it, but
Okay, let me see.
yeah, let me check out this section.
Okay. So we went through the nationalization stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I remember. Yeah, we went through the co-op system, the monopoly, like monopolies are inherently less harmful in a co-op system. Yep. Okay. I don't know if I got. We hopped around a little bit,
Yeah.
and then I kind of skimmed through it. But what do you want to elucidate on the document?
Uh, I guess like I can talk about like some of the basic stuff because I have a lot of the regulation section up here, right? And all of this regulation stuff is like it's simultaneously permanent. Something that I want to add to this document. It's simultaneously permanent, and it's also very flexible. Because the big thing that I want to do is whenever we do have large tests of worker co-ops, because I want to see how they function purely on a like when they're on their own. Because we'll know how they'll function in like a mainly capitalist dominated society, you know.
Right, and that's.
But
Go ahead.
when we move to like a truly just co-op based economy, or like a mainly co-op based economy, regulations might not have the same effects on co-op businesses as they would have on like traditional businesses. Some of like I have a feeling, and I'm sure you'd agree with me, automatically co-op businesses are more likely to act in good nature than traditional firms.
Well, yeah, because everybody's an investor, and
Yeah.
because everybody holds an investment, there's more of an incentive all the way around, no matter what,
Yeah.
to care for the company. I think that's actually something we were talking about last time about, how, or maybe I was talking to somebody else. There's this show called Bar Rescue, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Bar Rescue is interesting. I can't stand John Taffer, the guy that does the show. I can't stand him. He's a horrible human being. But there's something that you always notice in these shows, in that these failing businesses, The business owners don't give a shit. They're letting their business fall apart. And there's always like this one employee that's like trying to hold everything up, but they don't really get anything else out of it, you know? And then typically, you know, at some point during the whole thing, they end up quitting or some other shit happens. And it's like, then the business folds. And it's like, well, part of the reason the business folded is because they couldn't do anything to change the business practices of the owners, because they were at the will of the owners. It was basically like, all I can do is try to keep this business surviving long enough for me to keep my wage. You know what I mean? And you're putting all that burden on one person, and the owners are skirting their responsibilities, you know, and that I think with a co-op system where there's more equitable interest, you know, people are going to be more invested, and, you know, they are going to be quick to look at those that are not going to, you know, work and be a part of the cooperative and, you know, understand how to either, you know, democratize getting rid of people that don't want to be a part of the cooperative. Or
Do you ever see Kitchen Nightmares, like the Gordon Ramsay show?
yeah.
Kind of reminds me of that as well.
Yeah,
Like,
same way.
usually, like and even though like I'm pretty sure there's like some weird shit about with that show where there's like a reputation of after he does like his like revamp of the restaurant, it closes like 9 months later or something. I'm pretty sure there's like a precedent with that. But disregarding that, like the main thing that happens in all of those like problems is there's one person that kind of gets in the way of like moving forward. And one of the advantages of a co-op system is because it's inherently not based on hierarchy. You can get past those troublesome people.
Yeah.
Like,
What would be your solution for how to deal with that kind of situation?
in a co-op,
Yeah.
You can almost say it's a libertarian approach where businesses have the ability to overcome these problems. They can like vote out the people. They can remove them from positions of power. They can fire them in a overall sense. It can be difficult because in a lot of times what might happen if we have like large co-ops, one of the things I want to test for is how much co-ops actually end up becoming a popularity game as opposed to like an actual successful thing. I'm curious how much people will vote in order to like actually improve their business as opposed to voting in someone that they like from payroll or something.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons I want to see how that plays on a large scale. But if it does like prove that efficiency is what's on the mind of the people, then that problem hopefully won't happen. And then if there's enough businesses that are able to handle that and are able to push for efficiency, then that's just a market solution, you know. The market should hopefully be able to solve itself.
Right. So you'd still want co-ops to have the ability to do that. Okay. No, that makes sense.
It also depends because like this is the reason I want the test. Because I have no idea if co-ops are going to become like in our elections, and you'll agree with me. A lot of them are popularity games. They're not just who is like the best for the job.
Yeah, and I think that's why, you know, you have to be able to, you know, if you have to do that, you have to be able to rate things specifically by metric.
And I think one of the reasons that it might not go that way is because you will see the direct effect of the people that you elect. When you have these like government people that you elect into jobs, it's a much more like separated thing from you.
Oh,
But
yeah.
when you're electing your own boss, there's a chance that, well, it'll be a balance between whether the boss would be like a good person, like that is nice and like easy to the employees, or whether the boss is like a productive person. Because you can have a cool boss that isn't focused on productivity. So I want to see how these play out. You could observe them in like traditional co-ops as we have them right now, but I think it'll be telling when we see them on a large scale. So a lot of these, like for example, one of the most important regulations that I'm sure we both fight for in capitalism is the minimum wage, right?
Right.
But we know from even looking at like Norway and Australia, actually not Australia, but we know that like looking at Norway and stuff, that they don't need a minimum wage because they have unions that function the same as that fight on behalf of the workers that are strong enough to prevent this. And hopefully co-ops would work in the same way.
Yeah, and I could see that, and I agree. I think that it can be one or the other. You know, if you have a strong unionization and a strong social safety net, the necessity for the minimum wage wouldn't necessarily be there because you have the advocacy you've got your social safety net, and at that rate, because of the amount of taxes you're going to have to pay, they automatically will have to pay you more, because the whole way that you're able to even like have money, right? The whole way that money cycles is through paying taxes, and you can't pay taxes if there's no money to push through the marketplace, if you're talking about like market socialism. So it's through that that you're able to execute on that. And so naturally, because of that, those businesses still need to be able to get people to buy their goods, products, and services, right? So they're going to have to pay a higher wage, you know? And so that part of the market will naturally take care of itself, both with because of the taxation and because of coupled with the unionization, strong unionization, worker organizations.
It's interesting because at this point, and this is the reason that socialism actually exists, we have a good idea about how human nature rubs up against capitalism. We see how when people get into these positions of power within their hierarchies, how they fight for what they believe in and what they do, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But at the moment, we don't really see that with how a worker co-op society would function. It would entirely change the game. I know that there's some people who go around saying that it would just, it's capitalism but with extra steps, and I'm like, no, how it actually functions and what actually impacts the economy would change drastically from a co-op society to a basic one. For example, one of the big problems that we have like with co-ops in like modern day capitalism, and one of the reasons that I think that co-ops, like people will come up to me, like other market socialists, and they'll say that we just need to remove restrictions on co-ops, and they'll naturally replace businesses. And I don't think that's going to happen. I think that even if co-ops are more moral and might actually be a more productive system, I don't think that they're going to totally supplant traditional businesses in the market system. And one of the things that I want to test for is like, without traditional firms, I want to see how often co-ops hire other employees, because in our current system, co-ops are disincentivized from hiring other people because then you have to spread out the wage more. But that might change when we have a wide co-op system where co-ops one has to be on top, essentially. There will be certain co-ops fighting for the top of the game.
Well, and you got to remember, part of the problem is we currently do. I don't know if you could say it's we're not. I don't know if you could say it's exactly a monopsony, but we definitely are in an era where like there are big businesses that buy up more than the amount of resources they need for the intentional purpose to keep the price high for everybody else so that they don't have competition. And I think that's a big part of one of the biggest roadblocks that you have to maneuver around in order for like a co-op system like you're talking about to work. There would have to be some way to, and I don't want to say there'd have to be full, redistribution of resources, but there'd have to be a way to break up those monopsonies within our current, our current economic system.
I think the thing that I advocate for is I think there's going to need to be a period of very high taxation. Not like a full, we take everyone's belongings and do a full revolution thing, because then that would like defeat the purpose of trying to achieve this not through revolution.
Right.
But doing it so at least I like the idea, and I'm like currently thinking about how I want to handle it, because I like the idea that we put a high taxation on not life when you die, that the money that you put to your children. I like the idea that we put a very high tax rate on that, so that when we have these big billionaires passing away,
no, it makes sense.
Their money would not go directly to their children. I like that idea. I'm not sure how it would function fully, because it'll be a difficult transition from that phase to because if we go to a market socialist society and we still have like a bunch of billionaires still in that society, I think that it would end up coming across into the same problem. So it's
they would just
matter of like the timing, but
yeah, they would just find another way to seize resources, and because they'd still have money, and it's still money.
So it's a matter of like finding the perfect time and the perfect way. Because I would say, like, justifiably, probably the least violent, like, if you're considered tax as a form of like wealth appropriation, the least drastic is taxing the money you pass down to your children. I would say that's completely just like the
Well, and you know what? I don't even think many people of wealth uh, would feel as bad about it as they
yeah,
did
exactly.
10 years ago, because there's a lot of these very wealthy people that are coming out and they're like, no, I'm not leaving my kid my fortune. Like, it's going to charity or something. Like,
Hmm.
I'm not doing that, you know?
I mean, just look at the Koch brothers, right? They're the opposite.
Yeah, they're the opposite.
Yeah, some of like the biggest ones are kind of running that way. A lot of them are like kind of taking the they need to do the hard work approach
Yeah.
to try and get back to the way that they were. But I also don't know how much of that we'll actually see. Like looking at the data, that hasn't really played out. We haven't seen many billionaires die and not give their money immediately to their children.
Yeah, true,
Yeah,
true.
it'll be interesting. I like the idea of putting a high amount of tax on that specific thing, so we don't inherently like take away their rights, not their rights, but like we take away their wealth while they're living. But it's an idea that I think if we were, well, first we have to put like obviously we have to put high taxes on accruing wealth first off. Like we don't want them like once we decide we're making this transition, we don't want them to continue to accumulate wealth while we're in the transition phase between two systems, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I like the idea that we would just have it as a purely, hey, we know you're like crazy right now, but we're gonna like try and ease it up on you. I know you're gonna really hate it if we just take away all of your money immediately. So we're gonna try and spread it out, and we're gonna take away a large portion of it when you die. That's like the way that I see it being the most reasonable. Um, it's just
Agreed.
a matter of like time periods. But like the other things that we're gonna see is like I was just talking about. There's currently like a large disincentivization on hiring new workers because they need to spread out the wages in co-ops. But I have a feeling that that might only be true in a society dominated by capitalism.
Yeah, I could
That
see
may
that.
change when it transitions to like a tradition, like a fully co-op society. And it'll be interesting to see how that would change because I think currently, even if you were a co-op, like let's say you formed like a co-op that is the same thing as Amazon, right?
Hmm.
You're not gonna get as big as Amazon.
Oh, no.
No, yeah, no
Because,
business, even a traditional firm, could outcompete Amazon at this point. We'd have to wait for like a total collapse of Amazon. Uh, so I think currently co-ops are kind of incentivized to like take a safe route and just like aim for their own like miniature success.
hmm. And
Where I think
a more
in a,
sustainable, like economically, a more sustainable success.
yeah, so like it might not be like massive growth and like massive income increase, but in a like if you were to form a business, almost every co-op in our current situation we consider a success, right?
Hmm.
Like because they last longer, they have better results. But like if you're comparing those businesses to Amazon, you're not really going to see that kind of results that you're looking for. So I want to see how that would like play out. So a lot of these regulations that I have here, I have a feeling they would play out entirely different from how we can judge them in our current system. Like I've been running into people that are like against like that don't like the idea of like running these tests before retransfer because they think, hey, capitalism is awful and we need to get to it as soon as possible. But I mean, we have to get rid of it as soon as possible. But I really think that there's like some important stuff that we need to know before we truly make that shift.
Well, and you got to ease your populace into it too. They're not. I
Yeah.
think that's the thing, is it's about getting consensus. And remember, they've heard that scary word for so long, socialism. You know, like it's a bad
Mhm.
thing. You know, so you know when you're talking to people about that, you really have to change their minds about what the word means to them. You know, and
Yeah.
make them
I,
understand it
I've
from a
been
different
thinking about.
perspective.
I've been thinking about because currently, at least in America, socialism is associated with something terrible. And like it's associated with gulags, it's associated with Stalin, and it's associated with like Bernie Sanders did a lot to fix that.
Yeah.
But I've been thinking about like there's two options that we have here. We can wait for like a few generations to pass, where the generation that lived through the Red Scare is gone, and we have a generation that is like fully accepting. As long as like Kim Jong Un and like China chill and don't do anything, they're already doing awful things. But if they don't create a whole new awful association with socialism, uh, as long as we have like a period, we could wait for the idea of socialism to chill out, and then we try and make a better transition. The other option is which is the one that I'm currently in favor of, is we kind of eventually, when we get to a certain point, abandon the word socialism entirely. I currently like the idea of just going to an economic democracy phrase and just calling everything an economic, like the imagine it, the Economic Democracy Party or the economic or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be, at least if our goal is to switch and to advocate for something new, I think that would be a good idea. And I'm like, at the moment, I'm leaning towards that one, but both are potential options.
I've
I
been
just think,
I've been trying to use the term resource based economy more.
I like that one too. I think I really just like economic democracy, like especially for America, because we're so like democracy filled. Like,
Yeah, the whole Baru patriot thing. You know, America, I'm an
yeah.
economic democrat.
So like I really want to see how like everything plays out. Like one of the big things is I have a feeling and that like if we have a co-op based in like the coal industry, right? We might phase out, we might like nationalize the energy industry, but like hypothetically if we don't, there's strong arguments for like for doing it, not for doing it. But let's
Right.
say we put heavy regulations on a co-op energy. I have a feeling, or not I have a feeling, but there's like there's reasonable theories to believe that co-ops would act more reasonable than traditional businesses for like reducing carbon emissions and like destroying like releasing greenhouse gases and all this kind of stuff. But I have no idea what kind of regulations we're going to need to put on those if it's going to be need to be a nationalized industry, if all this stuff is going to change and all of this other stuff, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And the other big thing that I really want to see, and because I can make all the stipulations I want about how contracting will work in a co-op society, but I really want to see how it plays out in practice because I can't make any empirical. Because hypothetically, if we allow contracting as it is in our current society, it'll just go wild. You know, every business will have like a million contractors, and it will not be a co-op, and you'll just have like traditional firms.
Yeah.
Uh, but there's a chance that might not work out. I have a feeling that it probably is going to end up the same way, and we're going to need to restrict contracting. But I just want to see how it will actually play out. Like the thing that I worry about is that in order to get hired at a business, you're essentially going to have to pitch yourself as a contractor, and because I would not be surprised if that's what happens at these very large businesses. And I think there's like two options when we get there. We can either do what California has essentially done with interns, where they've made it incredibly expensive to have an intern, where the point where it's hard to be an intern, but also they don't have nearly as many interns.
Mm-hmm.
Or we make it so at least the contractor has a very high amount of bargaining power within the business. So
Yeah.
like it's
I definitely think finding a way to move away from contracting is a best
yeah.
the best solution.
Mm-hmm.
There's just you hit the nail on the head with like needing more bargaining power. I think the biggest thing with those types of roles is they are so quick to be exploited, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and that's one of the problems. But they're quick to take a job too, because usually they're just in need of work, so they're
Yeah.
willing to take exploitative contracts. And while on the surface it appears they're doing so willingly, and of course they have a choice as to whether or not they take the contract, right? When it's whether or not you're going to keep a roof over your head or get food in your mouth, I mean, you're going to try to get money, you know?
I mean, no fault to my mom. I was talking about this with her the other day, where when she was younger, she ran her own business, and everyone that she hired was contractors because they were the main people that she could afford.
Mm-hmm.
And then one day she was talking to them, and one of the contractors came up to her and like requested a day off because she needed to help her child with medical problems that she couldn't afford because she was a contractor. And basically that day she was like, pretty soon after that she had to close the business because she didn't feel comfortable with even having contractors where how the law functioned in that current way.
Mm-hmm.
Like nothing against her, obviously, but the things that we can get away with, like with contracting in our current business, I would even like stipulate that if we don't, I would say that changing the way contracting currently works might be a more drastic and immediate thing that we need to solve as opposed to immediately transitioning to socialism. I would say like if we're looking at like labor violations, we start with how penal labor works because that's like obviously it's pretty much no different from slavery.
Yeah, it is.
Um,
It is. It definitely is.
and then like next you look at contracting because I think because the big thing about how why contracting has dominated our current sphere is because it's allowed people to get away with like the without needing the same like I would say contracting is pretty much the closest thing to slavery outside of like penal labor. And then next we have like traditional wage slavery. So you could make an argument that that might even need to be a more drastic change that needs to happen sooner.
Yeah, I agree. The sooner that we can break that down, and um, there's a lot of places where because there's such flimsy job market regulations, those as bad as the contracts can be, they get a million times worse, and it's hard living depending on where you're at. Well, you're in Florida, so you guys have pretty loose workers labor
I
laws.
am a double contractor. I'm a contractor for Twitch and I'm a contractor for DoorDash.
Well, there you go. See, doing the damn thing. But yeah,
Were you keeping up with that Frito Lay thing?
what's that?
Did you keep up with the Frito Lay drama that happened?
Frito Lay drama. What happened?
Yeah. It was like a while ago where you know the business Frito Lay?
The what?
You know the business Frito Lay?
Yeah, yeah. I knew there was a strike with Nabisco. I didn't hear about Frito Lay though.
If you ever want to see something that like will immediately turn anyone into a socialist, let me grab this video. I reviewed it on stream when it happened. Uh, let me try and find it. It was a where the fuck? It was pretty much there was this, they brought out like the most pitiful person that had worked for it, and he had done the job. He got electrocuted doing his job. They didn't pay for his medical bills. Um, he essentially was disabled for life. He was working an 80-hour work week.
Wait, is this the one where they had the investigators following him around and shit?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. I do remember that. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, okay.
And like I just recently I've been like just thinking of that video that I saw with that poor dude. And it was like yeah, this is like basically when we allow contracting to get out of hand. This is what we get to when we I think he was a contractor, I'm pretty sure. But he wasn't still awful working conditions. Um that's what you get to when like you have how our current economy is functioning. And I remember seeing all of these dudes coming out with videos like criticizing this guy, and they were talking about, hey, this dude isn't like this is like an outlier for how awful it is, and like the fact that it happened once is like at all. I would dare say the fact that that could happen if it happened in my economy, that would be something worth jailing the business or like the top of the business owners for.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's any accountability really for the business owners when shit goes bad. A lot of these guys skate, they get golden parachutes. Maybe they lose their some kind of, licensure, to make it more difficult for them to do their job or something. But by and large, they're paid. And you know what? They end up going to work for like some other industry doing the same shit where they just don't need that licensure. You know what I mean? It's lather, rinse, repeat at that point. They've learned how to bilk the system for money, and they can insert that into any business. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like I've actually been I don't know if you have them where you lived. Have you heard of a business called Publix?
Oh, I know about Publix.
Okay. So
I've been there when I was in Florida, but
okay. I just like learned about this recently because, and once again, I had an annoying conversation with libertarians about this, where like Publix is a an ESOP. I forget. Like, let me look at what ESOP actually means. But it is an employee-owned business, but it's still run by a traditional firm. But
Hmm.
all of the stock is mainly owned by the workers. And like the current thing that I'm thinking about is I don't know how much I have a it's what's there's another one. There's the one in the north called Wingo's or something.
Yeah, we have Winco out here. They're an ESOP as well.
Yeah. And then there's another one that's a full co-op in the north that I forget what it is. But for some reason, like these businesses are dominating the grocery store uh, field. But I think it's real. I am like switching to thinking that in the transition state, we might like mainly advocate for ESOP businesses to make the first transition because I think the transition between ESOPs to like traditional firms to ESOPs to co-ops is going to be like a way easier transition than making the direct and immediate transition. You know.
Right.
Uh,
It's like it's softening the blow a little bit, you know.
yeah. It's also a matter because there's like two sides of it too. Because I think if that is something that we institute, then we're going to have people on the right during this time that are going to say we shouldn't even make the change from well we shouldn't make the change from traditional businesses to ESOPs, and then next we shouldn't make the change from ESOPs to co-ops. So like it's a balance between whether I think it'll be a functional and like something that we can actually pull off, and how much like resistance we're going to come along the way, and it's a difficult equation. One of the things I'm like thinking about right now with my document, and like the first thing I'm going to advocate for immediately is like the first steps that we need to take, but are also this the thing that I think is least likely to actually happen along the route is I think we need to do a major overhaul of the both the Republican Party and any kind of like we need to essentially get rid of them, not like completely, but we need to like disadvantage them entirely for the rest of the for a very long time until they become more reasonable.
Well,
And the other one is
I think that
uh,
happens when you shift the Overton window. When you start shifting the Overton window with public sentiment, those parties have to move to the left because if they don't, they're not going to have voters. And I think we were talking about as I was talking about how you kind of need like a counter. You're always going to need a counterbalance to whatever the prevailing ideology is, because otherwise the prevailing ideology can go too far or can become so entrenched in the ideology that they don't see when there's problems that arise. You know what I mean?
I actually heard. Okay, I think I caught a show where you were talking about that with someone.
Yeah, and you're
And
asking me how far to the right it was I talking about, and I
yeah, it
said,
was actually like I actually heavily disagree with how far that you were willing to let people. Like I'm not willing to let like Joe Manchin be as far right as what I would want. I want
but
like
I would peg him as like he would be the extreme far right though, like he would be like the farthest right Republican. So in that case, like that might be all
I'm not
right.
even, like
Yeah.
as crazy as it sounds. I was thinking about if I like obviously in my perfect world, but if I was able to like shape a society where we're at, because I agree with you that you need like a counterbalance, right?
Hmm.
But I also don't think like I think the counterbalance can't get in the way.
Oh yeah. They've just got to be able to slow things when shit's getting
Yeah,
hairy. Uh,
and like the thing that I think like I if I had like my perfect world, I don't think that's what we're ever gonna get. But if I had my perfect world, because I think like what we're gonna get is like actually like probably with Joe Manchin being the farthest right person that we're fighting. But if I were to get what I wanted, we would have it be Elizabeth Warren is the farthest right person. I'd be okay with. Uh,
I mean, I ain't mad at it.
yeah, well, like because I'm like because Elizabeth, I don't know, do a lot of Elizabeth Warren slander, I guess, when it's not warranted. But
I mean, she used to be a Republican, so yeah.
yeah, well, like Elizabeth Warren specifically, the reason I look at her is she's very clearly a SOC dem, well opposed to Bernie. And I will fight anyone on this where Bernie just say he's also a sock dem. I because so many people so many people talk about how Bernie is not left enough to actually like agree with any of us.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's a matter of like necessity of how left he is.
Well, and here's the thing: he would separate himself from a SOCDEM. That's why he would call himself a democratic socialist, because they actually are. The concept is to move towards socialism. Like, it doesn't stop with just a soft, or it doesn't stop with just a strong social safety net. It would end up, democratizing workplaces and stuff like that. So I think he would go much further if he could.
I think because like the most radical thing that he tried to do was he tried to give 20% of the stock of a business, require that to be owned by the workers, and I thought that was a fantastic idea. But it was definitely the most radical thing that he proposed. That was, if you remember the debate where the first debate where who was that the billionaire who was like running for president during that time?
Oh, Tom.
No, not him. The other one, who was the mayor of New York.
Oh, Mike Bloomberg.
Mike Bloomberg. Yeah.
What a scumbag! Don't get me started on Mike
actually,
Bloomberg.
on that note, what would you be more comfortable with, a Joe Manchin or a Mike Bloomberg? As like the farthest right you could get.
I mean, that's like asking me if I want to like kill myself with a bullet or a knife in Roblox, but both are going to be painful no matter what. I'm still going to be in the same place. I don't know, because they're both so bad, man. Like, they are both real bad. I mean, Mike Bloomberg probably scares me more because he's already a monopolist, and like Joe Manchin doesn't quite have that power in the economy,
He may be, his blood may be oil, but he's not a billionaire.
Right, exactly. Hit the nail on the head.
It's a counterbalance, because I think and what I will advocate for in order to if we want to get here the quickest, the thing that we need to advocate for more than Medicare for all, more than free college, more than even more than $15 minimum wage, is we need to immediately abolish the electoral college, being the first thing that we need to do. And then the other thing that I really want to see is we need to make voting almost every important voting day a national holiday, and have strong tax incentives for voting. Those are those are the three things that I think need to be the immediate fix. Following that would also be the correction of gerrymandering.
Oh yeah, I honestly, I'm almost at the point now where I think voting should be compulsory.
Yeah, that's why I will because I actually had a quick conversation with Hans about this, and we talked, and he said, I agree. Like, I actually originally thought that voting should be compulsory. I'm thinking that we should try a phase where if you vote, you get major tax write-offs. I like the idea of having it be an incentivization thing first, and if it still doesn't work, then we'll make it compulsory. That's where I am on that.
That could be good. You're gonna get pushback from people that'll be like, well, whoever passes this legislation is gonna be treated like bribery, like they're just bribing people to vote. That would be, I'm just telling you what the other side of the argument would be, which is weak though. It's weak. It's a weak argument, but they're gonna try to push that up. It's gonna be one of those Marjorie Taylor Greens out there. It's
I'm not actually sure, because Republicans are pretty in favor of tax cuts and stuff like that. So I think it'll be a hard pull for them to advocate against tax cuts. Not that they wouldn't do it. I'm sure in a heartbeat, if it helped them, they'd do it.
Oh, you know what? It might too, because most of the community that votes are older white people and non-working class people. Yeah, you could be right, but then they wouldn't go for voting being a holiday.
Yeah, it should be both.
I agree.
I also think because I agree with you, but I think giving tax write-offs for making it able to vote I think that's an easier sell than making it compulsory at the moment.
Yeah, and because you can do it across the board, there's no means testing for it. Everybody gets to
Yeah.
participate.
So I think like as an immediate transition, I'm like open to moving there towards the future. I also think like I wonder because like there's a hypothetical argument that a neoliberal could make, right? Where they say that because uh, a large demographic that doesn't vote is the African American community. You could call it like maybe a racist law. I don't know. That would be a very weird argument that I could hypothetically see. That's what like you'll see with Destiny do though, right? They'll argue that we shouldn't do the debt forgiveness for like college debt forgiveness because it's not it doesn't favor the African American community enough.
But if we do debt forgiveness coupled with free college, university,
Yeah.
trade school, and
What is against that's like the problem with Destiny because like I do a lot of coaching my arguments against Destiny's position at the moment.
right.
So like Destiny isn't in favor of free college at all. He's in favor of a means-tested version of it. He's in favor of pretty much a means-tested version of every kind of policy we support. So I foresee those being the challenges that we run up against.
That's not reasonable or equitable though at the end of the day, because part of the
Yeah,
problem with means testing is some people can't even get to the point where they can like get through the paperwork to means test for it. You know what I'm saying? Like some people live in places where they've like the states and the cities have deliberately made it harder for them to be able to access those kinds of places, and the funding for them is very low, and they don't have a lot of workers, even though they have a lot of people in need of the services, right? And so that's why means testing doesn't work in a lot of situations. It's really
yeah,
because you put this power in the control of a small group of people who have an interest in, if they ideologically, sometimes have an interest in preventing um, you from being able to have these benefits, and so they kill the programs. But
yeah.
if
But,
it's not
mhm.
means tested, they don't have a way to kill the program, because it's just like it's you just go. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you just go to
I
the
mean,
college.
yeah, that's the problem with like the current Medicare, like not the Medicare, but the current like universal health care that they have in Britain right now because it was mean tested so much that it's been able to be removed to hell.
Yeah.
Um, it's an interesting problem because I'm very curious how Republicans would act. Especially, and also like the libertarian types would be open to the idea of making voting like giving tax write-offs because I think it's going to be the balance between because we see that the Republicans currently are trying to make it as difficult as possible to vote. They have like the licenses that they're trying to do for like in like largely African American communities. They have the all this like means testing. They're trying to advocate against a lot of the stuff that we want to see, but they're also like majorly in favor of tax write-offs and stuff like that. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested to see how they would play around with the idea and whether or not it would be bipartisan. I think it's honestly, if we do the tax write-offs things, I think that's one of the strongest things we should advocate for right now. Because I have a feeling that could be a it would be a large bipartisan effort on that end. Because I think no matter what, there would be a few Republicans that like will take the tax write-offs no matter what, you know?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I agree with you. Um, and that you're right. There is a possibility that they could make that a really easy sell because he doesn't like a tax write-off, at least in
Mhm.
their circles. Um, so yeah, I could see that. I could see that working.
That's what I think is like we need to make those like immediate things. Also, like the voting thing, I think it's possible that we could get like the voting, like making it a national holiday, the voting day through. Like I think as an option, we need to start fighting for the like pro democracy things the most. I think that's the things that we need immediately. I don't think it's gonna happen. I think the thing that if we push for it right now, we could get the tax write offs. But if we want to actually push towards these goals, if we want to see more Bernie Sanders in like less radicals in like more purple and like even maybe red districts, because we have seen a few like pushes for progressives in red districts. Um, I think we need to see those like adding like increasing democracy.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I know where we're at in Arizona, like for years. Okay. I mean, this was for we actually celebrated it on this last election cycle. I think it was 20 or 30 years that we had had a no excuse mail in ballots and early voting. So all you had to do was register for it and you could get it. It was no big, like you could do it on a website, that was that. And they've just eroded this, And now we don't have that. We don't have the ability to do the they're actually it's supposed to go into effect this next election cycle. They're going to make it
Yeah,
very hard for us.
Arizona was one of like the last states to also do the counting, right? When we had the like the 2020 election cycle, I remember it was one of the few that was like, it went pretty blue, but
Yeah.
it was like one of the later ones.
Yeah, we went for Biden. We got two Democratic senators, although Kirsten Sinema is acting more like a Republican than a Democrat. So our congressional delegation is predominantly blue. We have some pretty big red firebrands there though too, because we've got Andy Biggs and Paul Gosar, and those guys are now being looked at as helping to have put together the January 6th rally. So wonderful.
And actually, one of the nice things, like as awful as Florida is as a state, right? One of the nice things that it kind of went through is because of all of the drama from like the 2000 election that happened. We have like a super like we don't want to mess up voting again, essentially.
Right.
We were like one of the first to do mail-in vote, like one of the first to do count-in for mail-in voting. We've been one of the first to like actually be efficient. And actually, one of the interesting things that we saw here, I don't know if you kept up with it, but one of the other things that was being campaigned for during the 2020 election was specifically in Florida, we had a $15 minimum wage bill.
Yeah, I
And
saw
even
that.
though our state went for Trump, the $15 minimum wage bill got passed.
It just goes to show that economic populist ideas actually work. You
Yeah.
know, and and when people are pitched an idea without the party or the political affiliation attached to it, it's interesting how much more inclined they are to hop on board with it.
Yeah. It's like an interesting thing because I try and take like a super utilitarian approach towards like pushing for my like goals electorally, you know? So at certain times, because a lot of people, and one of the things that I used to be really into is like the idea of a third party, right? I really like the idea of having a very left third party that actually had the ability to get stuff done. And like in our current state, that's not like actually a feasible thing that can happen. Uh, we have it so third parties are super disincentivized, they can't get anywhere, and it's incredibly hard for anything to get done, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think if we are able, like as awful as it sounds, I think if we are able to make the Democratic Party, like, and this I talked about this the other day, where I think the American system is pretty much like as much as someone can call it a democracy, it's actually pretty much the opposite. And like you'll probably agree with me on this. I think the way our system is built to help the largest minority party. It's not built to help the majority. It's actually built to hurt them.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you have the smaller, like the second largest party, I think you have a much easier time because if you win the election, you can get stuff done. Because even though you're the minority, we still give you like unreasonable power to get elected. When you're not the minority, you can play the victim on pretty much everything that gets done.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You mean when you're not the majority?
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah, and that's like what the Republicans are doing right now. We don't want any of this, and they're reasonably so. They're fighting back very well.
Mm-hmm.
They're holding steady, and it's really an albatross around the neck of the Democrats, especially when you have these stupid center right Democrats like the Kirsten Cinemas and Joe Manchins, like we're talking about. They're killing us. You know, they're
Like
they're
the other
killing
thing
they're
about
killing the progress.
and like this may like I honestly need to do more research on this because I want to do a lot of research on the how the 19th Amendment got passed. Because I think if we're going to push towards a lot of the things that we need to take a similar approach to what happened with the 19th Amendment because somehow that managed to get passed, even though it was probably it was obviously a very radical idea at the time. And I don't know how you would push it through in our current block that we have. Because I have no idea how we can push through any progressive legislation without completely uh, pretty much owning every seat in the Senate and the House, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's insurmountable. I think what it's going to be a slog, man. It's going to take time, and that's why I've always said like I don't like incremental progress, but
Mhm.
I'll take it because I'll take anything that I can get as long as people are still pushing for the ultimate goal. You know,
Yeah.
like get me
It's
across the finish line, like because
it's not
you have to change a lot of
yeah.
hearts and minds, you know what I mean, and that's where we come into problems is
Mhm.
that's the hard part.
It's almost a balance from like one of the things that I think about that could be a potential path towards getting our goals is I think it would take a large amount of international pressure. I think one of the big things that'll need, like, if we actually want to get stuff done, is I think there's going to be a large push from Europe, a large push from Canada, a large push from Australia, and a large push from other, like, similarly reasonable areas that there needs to be a push from them to push us towards a more progressive route. Like, you'll see one of the things that I'm really liking that's, like, pushing towards one of our goals is a lot of our, the juice or like the stuff that we use to euthanize people for the death penalty that
Mm-hmm.
was made in Europe. And because Europeans found that so abhorrent that we were using it for the death penalty, they actually stopped selling it to us, and it made it a much easier. It will eventually make it a much easier push to get rid of the death penalty.
Yeah,
And like I think that's going to be one of the things that we need to push for. Uh, Honestly, I'm in favor of like a death penalty abolishment amendment. That's one of the things that I think needs to happen.
I don't
Um,
really see anything good with the death penalty. I don't think that it's an effective tool. I don't think that it reciprocates any concept of justice. I think what you end
yeah.
up with is just, you know, and oftentimes, you know, we've seen, you know, where legal challenges have presented, and we come to find out after the person's been well, I'll say state sanctioned murdered,
Hmm.
um, they were innocent, you know,
Yep.
and
10% of the at least of the ones that we know of, 10% were found innocent.
so you know, 10%. If it's supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, well, it looks like we screwed up on a huge chunk. I mean, when you're talking about deaths, 10% is a lot to me. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? So
That was like I was watching a I watch a lot of Destiny. Unfortunately, I'm not like a huge Destiny fan. I watch Vosh a lot more than I watch Destiny. But I was watching a panel that he was on, and apparently there's this death penalty argument that is it's like a jar of jelly beans argument where if you know that 10% of the jelly beans are poisoned in a jar of jelly beans, would you still eat out of that jar?
no,
And
I mean I wouldn't. You know.
yeah, and then like Destiny brings the reason I was so mad at Destiny because he brought up the point that there are plenty of stuff. There's plenty of stuff that we do from day to day where we accept a large amount of risk, even though it's part of our day to day. The thing that he brought up was like driving and like how much risk that we run into with even when you just get in a car, you're like way more likely to just die. Like the main thing that we like people will die is car accidents. I thought that was like a terrible argument because then I can just come along and say, well, yeah, I think that's a terrible thing too,
Hmm.
and that needs to be changed.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's not a good argument. And it veers the conversation off course, and that was
Hmm.
the intent. He just didn't want to talk
Hmm.
about that. He didn't like that. He didn't like that rhetoric because he didn't have a reasonable answer for it, and so
Yeah. Well, he is. Like, it was weird because he's anti-death penalty, but he's also anti that specific argument. So it was weird, but
Hmm.
I don't know. There's so much stuff that like I'm interested in like coaching an argument for. Like, and I think one of the, like there's a combination between two things that we need to actually push towards our goal. I think our best chance of actually getting an overhaul of our prison system is going to be pushes from international relations. Also, same with our immigration system. Like, I don't think that we're going to be in a state to actually solve that problem. I think that we're going to need to have like treaties from in an international level to actually push towards fixing those goals.
Yeah, I agree because there's too many moneyed interests that would prevent that. Because we're still in a capitalist system, there's still the need to be able to exploit labor that is easily gotten rid of, that can't unionize, that can't protect themselves. And so, as long as there's that, um, people are nobody's ever going to say it. They want the immigration, and they do want the people to come over, but they
Mm-hmm.
want them to come over as second class citizens. And they want them to work as second class citizens. And they want it to be known that they can get rid of them at any time they want. And do what I'm saying? They and
Yeah,
treat them
it's
however they want.
honestly a it's kind of a because I think like wanting immigration like because if the Republican Party was actually like it's weird because there's a lot of time where the Republican Party is caught up between its nationalism and its moneyed interests, you know?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Because if it was actually fully interested in just helping billionaires, it would love immigration.
Oh yeah.
Donald Trump had it like I would say that Donald Trump is the most anti-immigration president we've ever had. Like maybe like since our isolationist period, but like in modern history, obviously, he was the most anti-immigration. Even though if we call uh like as much as we're gonna call Obama the deporter in chief, I think it's
Mm-hmm.
fair to say uh Trump was our most anti-immigration president we ever had.
Oh yeah, yeah, I could see that.
But at the same
It
time,
was the rhetoric and the cruelty.
mhm,
I think that played a big role in it. I mean, because he was just outwardly cruel. And
mhm.
there was no, he didn't care. Like he
But
just
it's
didn't
also
care.
strange because his businesses profited massively off of uh immigrant labor.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's gross. He's the most disgusting contradiction of himself. You know what I'm saying?
So it's very interesting to see where the nationalism plays against the the corporate interests. And there are and that's like an exact argument why I think it's an argument against the idea of the tax write-offs that I was talking earlier. That they're willing to take they're willing to hurt large businesses if it means being pro nationalism.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Which is so. Yeah. I don't understand that.
Well, and it might show the contradiction between like neoliberalism and being a neocon, I guess. It's interesting to see where these areas line up because I think a lot of the time people just assume that the Republican Party is a full like loves capitalism party to the major degree, but I don't know if it actually is all the time, you know.
Well, there's still a lot of workers' plight. They still
Yeah.
have. They're still angry about their economic situations. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So if you look at like fascists or like what the Republicans are, which I think they're really leaning into fascism,
Hmm.
they look to find these economic divergences in the culture, and then they play on that, and then they find the other divergences, the racial divergences and stuff like that, and start playing off of that, and leading people into this rhetoric of fear and angst. You're fed up because you're not getting any money. All these immigrants are taking the good jobs, even though the reason they don't have good jobs is because the businesses aren't paying them what they're worth. It has nothing to do with the immigrant labor, but it's so easy to quick and spin that, especially you have somebody that's, that's not how can I put it? Especially when you have somebody that's not okay. So you have a business not providing the wage that the job deserves, and then you have people coming in that still need to fill these roles, right? And you've got these guys over here thinking, okay, well, we should be mad at these guys because you had this guy foment all this rage, and all this rhetorical crap at him. You know what I mean? And so now he's mad at people unwarrantedly, but it's because a lot of times these people don't have the insight. And I'm not saying they're dumb. It's not that. It's that they live in these vacuums of thought, and once an idea penetrates that kind of takes off and takes hold, then it gets clinged onto in these areas, especially like rural areas, because there's no other convergences where they can pick up a different ideology or learn something. I mean, now we're seeing more of that because of the internet, right? That's doing that, but there's still that, those people you function with on a day-to-day tactilely, and when they lean so much into something, it's very hard for a lot of people to lean the other direction, and I think with somebody like Trump, he was really good at infecting those areas. And, he's a perfect example of a fascist, like we're talking about,
Yeah.
and I think that's how they tap into it. And then
Well, that's the interesting thing about, well, sorry, you can continue.
Well, I was going to say, well, the thing about fascism is they can pivot to the right or the left because their only aim is just to continue to foment enough of that anxiety and that rage to keep themselves in control, and that seems to work really well with the right because the right expresses the rage, right? Whereas the left tends to like try to express love and hugs and, teddy bears and shit like that. You know what I mean? And, some people are pissed off, man. They're just really mad,
That's
And
kind of like, we were talking about this the other day. That's also kind of the interesting thing about why people like what's his name? He's streaming right now, isn't he? I guess he ended. Like the tankies are kind of rising up because I think one of the things with the tankies is they kind of almost provide an alternative.
oh,
They're
like
really
Haas,
aggressive.
like
Yeah.
infrared.
Mhm. Yeah, infrared. I think they almost provide an alternative to the right because they're the only people on the left. If you want to call them on the left, I don't. But they're the only non like right wingers because I don't know if I'd call them right wingers, but they're the only non right wingers that actually
We'll get pissed
kind
off
of
and get
go
in
with
people's
the.
face.
Well, yeah, they also kind of love this like really aggressive, mean style almost,
Mm-hmm.
similar way to fascism.
It's a
I mean,
horseshoe theory.
that's like the thing about fascism. Fascists, they really like um, capitalism until it no longer serves their purposes.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's why fascism can come in all sorts of economic designs. It's not necessarily
Yeah.
a exclusive to fiscal conservatism.
hmm I think like that's one of the interesting things because I'm gonna do a lot about writing about that because I think I have the plan that I'm gonna be writing out and the part that I really want to get to and I have to finish all of this like beginning stuff because we'll look through the like I have the document and we'll look through the document and we're gonna agree pretty much 100% on all of the things that need to get done in order to like accomplish our goals, right?
Right.
We're
Okay.
gonna agree on like how we should fix our prison system. We're gonna agree on like Medicare for all. We're gonna agree on like all this kind of stuff, right? But what I think and what I want to do is I want to plan out multiple routes that we can actually push for to get to our eventual point. And I think we're kind of in a losing battle right now. Like obviously, but I think even the way that we're approaching our goals is almost a losing battle. As much as I love like, and this is what I'll talk about. I love Bernie Sanders, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's like an amazing force. We talk about him a lot too.
Sure.
But I'm actually, and I think the thing that Bernie Sanders, like I talked about this, I'm happier that Bernie Sanders popularized his ideas much more than if he had won the election. I think like what him and AOC do by popularizing their ideas is more valuable than any legislation they could actually push. Um, because like what we run into is even if we got like let's say we magically got Medicare for all in our system, right? You there?
Yeah, I'm listening. Go
Okay.
ahead.
If we get Medicare for all in our system, is like you were talking about earlier, even though it's not means tested, it's still gonna we're still gonna eventually like at some point we might have a red wave and we'll have a Republican Supreme Court and they'll deem it unconstitutional.
So how do you solve for that? You have to codify it.
I think it's a matter of like pushing I think it's a matter that we can't just have a few people in these high places. I think currently the way we have it right now, AOC, Ilhan Omar, Bernie Sanders, all of these lovely people, they they're a very large and outspoken minority, but they're still a very small minority.
Yeah.
And I think that needs to change, and that needs to be almost our focus. That's
So
why I'll get like pissed off at anyone who calls himself a socialist, and like will criticize. Because I had a debate with my friend over this, and I love having this debate because I think it's incredibly dumb. People that talk about how socialists shouldn't be hypocritical with anything that they do, and that they need to live up to their principles 100%. Like people that are mad that AOC wore the dress, people that are mad that Hassan who has the house. I think the most important thing that these people could do, no matter what advocacy they push for, is going to be popularizing their ideas.
yeah, I agree, and I think that I think it lends to the it's my favorite saying, the left cannibalizing itself, man. Like we do better job at it than the Republicans will ever do for us, or the right will ever do for us.
Well, it's almost an interesting matter because, like, I would say, like, I'm okay with this, and think it would not play out as well. But I would love if, like, like I'll take Kirsten Sinema for example. Kirsten Sinema pitched herself as a lot more left than she actually turned out to be, right?
Right.
I would make the argument that I would like, and I think you'd agree with me. You'd prefer Kirsten Sinema to a Joe Manchin, right? Very close. But
Yeah, probably. She's a little bit better on some of the social issues, so yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, anything coming with spending money on the people, hell no, she's not going to do that. But social issues, she's good on those.
I would actually make the argument that if we had people like Kirsten Sinema, I think having Kirsten Sinema in her position might be a really good force if we like focus on her a lot more. Something that I might start doing in the future. If we focus on a lot more, having a disgusting neoliberal who pretends to be a sockdom like Kirsten Sinema did is honestly a really good thing that we can do for our rhetoric, because she can push for these ideas and then she doesn't live up to them, and then she can serve as a force to galvanize our ideas.
Oh,
Joe
sure.
Manchin is just a dumb conservative, right? He never promised us anything left. He never said that he was going to do anything special. But when Kirsten Sinema goes up and says, like when she campaigns and says, "I'm for $15 minimum wage, I'm for Medicare for all, and I'm for all this stuff," and then does nothing when she gets up to the floor, what she's done is she's pissed off her base.
Oh yeah.
And then you can use that base to galvanize support against her and against Republicans as well. And you can push for farther left people. Like, I would love, as a controversial statement, I would love if we had a Senate full of Kirsten Sinema. As awful as that would be,
Oh God.
I think that would be an incredible galvanizing force for our ideas.
Oh yeah, it would definitely get us all on the same page. That's for damn sure. Real quick. We have 100 common enemies. Oh man. But I think that it's through electoralism. I think you're right that we have to do the work on that front. And it's not just about the protesting. It's not just about the chatting online. you know, it's not just about these elements. It's like we got to be out in the streets doing it too, you know. And so that's my biggest push, I think, for everybody is to get involved on some level, you know, like because that civic responsibility is so important. You know,
It's a weird
we're gonna
balance.
live and die on the hill of civic responsibility.
It's a weird balance between a few things because like I don't know how much leftist advocacy that's pushed for actually accomplishes its goals. Like something that we look at, like the biggest protests we've ever seen in American history, the BLM riots. Even though it's still reasonably popular, the popularity has like dipped as it goes on. So I'm like, I like go back and forth on whether you could make a true like statement on how you need to like advocate for your ideas. Like I think, and I'll like fully agree with this. I'm where we are right now, where we push for like a co-op economy. We're kind of in a nice stage because our ideas are new and our ideas are like when we talk to a Republican about our ideas, they haven't heard their talking points against co-ops yet. You know?
Yeah, so you have to beat them to the punch on it.
Yeah. But like one of the things is, as our ideas become more popular, we're gonna start seeing those Republican arguments against our ideas.
Oh, sure. The think tanks will get to work and figure out
Yeah.
the talking points memo and ship it
So
out.
like, and I'm sure like that happened like ages ago when it happened with, like when women were trying to get the ability to vote. Uh, I'm sure that definitely happened during the Civil War times where you had all these like standard arguments against all this stuff, and like we're kind of in the nice stage where we can make these like fringe arguments against ideas, and like one of the nice things that I guess it's like a both sides thing because of like Bernie Sanders' push for co-ops right now, which I'm sure he would. He has done policy, but it hasn't been like at the forefront of his ideas. But if we push for co-ops right now, it might actually be a lot harder to get them in like into place in the future. I wonder how like the utilitarian calculus plays on that because if he had popularized the idea of co-ops, there would be more arguments against co-ops and it would be a harder pitch. But at the same time, he would have popularized the idea to more people, and it would have also made it easier to advocate for. So it's an interesting thing because I'm trying to think about like what would be the best approach. And obviously, at some point, what I predict will happen is if we move far enough left, the idea will be popularized, and we'll have arguments against it, and we'll just live with that reality. You know?
Yeah, and but I think that having the arguments against it's a good thing, especially if you have a strong argument for, and you know you can materially state your case. And in that situation, I think that there is a very solid argument for. I think there are plenty of reasons, even from a libertarian point of view, why you might suggest that this would be a better direction. Because if you're a libertarian, you don't really specifically want to work for anybody, and working in a collective would be more in line because you stand to benefit more from working in a collective. You know, in
I,
those smaller
I would love
situations.
if like because I think I want to find libertarians who are not ANCAPs because I want to have a legitimate discussion with a libertarian who doesn't want to like fully abolish our system. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Because and maybe I'll talk with Pan about it. That might Pan isn't an ANCAP, right? He's just a standard libertarian.
He's socially, he says he's socially left libertarian. So yeah, he'd be a really good person to talk to. In
Because
terms
like
of having some opposition, you know, in that argument, I'm sure he'd do it too.
because the thing about traditional libertarians is they're not. I'm gonna disagree with them on plenty of stuff, but they're not like actually fully against the use of the state. You know, they
Oh
want
yeah,
it removed from as much as possible, but they view there are reasonable times to use the state. Problem with an ANCAP is they'd say that there's never a good time to use the state.
yeah.
Um, so I wonder if how interested they would be in pushing towards a like a co-op based society. Because I've heard from, and I guess I want your opinion on this too. Because I don't think if we just move, like, because a lot of people will go around and they'll say if we purely move to like if we remove all the restrictions on co-ops right now, because there are currently a ton of them, but if we remove all of those restrictions, that co-ops are going to automatically flourish and take over. I think there will probably be more of them, but I don't think that we're going to go into a market socialist society naturally.
No, I don't either, because people are going to be leery of it. There's going to be propaganda campaigns against the ones that do end up popping up. Um, the uh, non-cooperative workplaces will try to find other ways to compete and try to put them out of business. You know, you'll probably see like more interest in stockpiling resources. You know, within it's going to be a swan song. You know what I'm saying? Like those businesses are going to really they're going to do their best to maintain. And as if the cooperatives can hold steady, and you know maintain that strong foothold, weather that storm out, I think that's when you'll see the flourishing. But at first, it's going to be like tooth and nails. You know,
Yeah.
these people aren't
It'll
giving up
be
their businesses that easy. You know.
it'll be interesting because one of the things that you said there I really liked about how you were talking about that like in the beginning phases might be difficult. I think the difficulty that we'll run into is unless we oh this is what I was going to say, unless we fix the way that our stock market functions, I don't think that co-ops will ever be able to fully dominate the field because the ability for co-ops because co-ops can't give up controlling stocks
Mm-hmm.
while a traditional firm can give up controlling stocks, and that makes it incredibly easy. Like I think that's going to be the main way that traditional firms will dominate the field, even in a like where co-ops have no restrictions. Because I do think, in a small sense, only if we incorporate how the stock market functions, that co-ops may end up being less profitable.
Yeah, I could see
Just
that.
because of the ability for them not to raise as much initial capital. Like if we had it so you could only give like let's say you could only um like put non-controlling shares in the stock market. Like it would basically be a gambling system, right? Where you don't get control, but you can gamble on the prospective wins and losses of the business.
Right, right.
That might be a potential thing, but I think that might be one of the hardest sells uh, because there's so much moneyed interest in the stock market.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Nobody's going to give up what they've got in invested in the stock market. You have to
Mm-hmm.
see like a total complete crash. That's kind of what needs to happen there.
And
Um,
we'd want to avoid that as much as possible at the
yeah,
same time.
that wouldn't be good for us. So I don't know how you move off of that. That's going to be a tricky one. Do you have something in your paper about that?
It's something that I'm eventually going to push to. I think the best way to do it is you put a high amount of tax on uh, capital gains,
And
and you have a
discourage
and like
short trades.
yeah, I think that's like would have to be an incremental process towards it. Though it's also like it's a hard balance. Like for example, one of the businesses that promotes them like before COVID-19, after COVID-19, it was like it's been flourishing. Before COVID-19, Tesla wasn't actually a very profitable business. It was making a lot of its money off of capital investment specifically. So you'll see businesses like this where I like hypothetically, if we don't change the stock market to any degree, um, traditional firms are just gonna knock other firms out of the water.
Yeah. So there's yeah. Oh boy, we got a lot of work to do to get to market socialism, don't
No,
we?
right? That, that's why it's so annoying to write this document. And that's what I want to get to this part of it, the part that I'm discussing with you right now, because it's a really difficult matter to push towards all of these ideas. Something that I should write about is like the changes I should see to the stock market. I go back and forth on whether I want the stock market to be because if we have the stock market like only be speculative, I don't like that idea either. I don't like the idea that we have a large gambling system where you can become essentially a massive billionaire by not doing anything.
I don't think we should have a stock market. I don't think that
Well,
that's
it's
not in the current form at all.
yeah,
Like, I think if you want to invest in, invest in shares of businesses, sure, you should be able to do that. But the rapid sale and the high volume like trades and shit like that, I don't think, I think that, yeah, heavy taxation. You could do taxation on the capital gains, and then per trade taxations. You know.
Well, it's like it's a hard balance between disincentivizing, uh, like investment, because you want to prevent investment from being a mechanism to gain massive power, but you also don't want to stop investment.
Right. But that's why you slow it down. That's why you slow it,
Yeah.
And if you can curtail it, if you can slow it, then it stabilizes the market, because then you're in a situation where you've got people who are long-term investments in these businesses. The businesses understand that they have a responsibility to these stakeholders, whether they're a cooperative or a traditional business. Across the board, it would promote a higher level of efficiency, and honestly, it could lead to a lot of changes in how they view labor as well, because long-term investors don't want to be tied to businesses with bad business practices.
One of the things that, and I think this may be the end solution that I really like, is that Norway currently has a current way that through their taxation, some of the taxation that they take, they reinvest that in local business, and then they redistribute the profit from that capital to the people. And I really like how that works. If that could be applied on a wide scale, I think that would be like a really good system.
So that's
Like,
essentially, it's essentially like a mini UBI almost, like not
yeah,
necessarily UBI,
but
but
it's not even like for the purpose. I like the idea of like the redistribution of wealth, but it's not even for the purpose of redistribution. Like I like it purely from the funding of businesses point of view.
sure, sure, I could see
It
that.
does two things as well. I go back and forth because like I want to see what would happen if we have like a large UBI, because I think like, and you'll probably agree with me. UBI works way better when we've moved to a post scarcity society.
Oh yeah,
When, mhm.
yeah. I actually, UBI right now in our economy scares the shit out of me, because all I see is every single industry raising their prices by what they think is equitable to that extra $1,000 a month or whatever they hit it at. We
Even if we like, let's say we move past all of like the basic restrictions, right? Like, let's say we make it illegal. Like, we'll do some form of like price control, so you can't just raise your prices at the end of the month. Let's say that UBI works like fully as intended. Like even like the Republican strawmans inherently scare me a little bit, because like I don't know if we'd see a disincentivization of work, but I think it would probably impact the amount of like people that go to work if we have large UBI. I like the idea of having it so people don't have to work, right?
mhm.
I think it's inherently violent that we like, and the fact that libertarians don't view this as violent is insane. But the fact that you are like forced to go to work when you don't want to is a massive restriction. I'm not sure if that's like something that we can fully change. Like once we
So
move to a scarcity society, we could, but I don't know if that's something we can do right
So
now.
you talk about disincentivization to work, but I think the thing is a lot of people aren't fulfilling what it is they actually want to do for
Yeah,
work because they can't afford to do it. And I think for a lot of people that would give them the means to do that. Sure, you're going to have some people that'll be disincentivized. I don't think it would be any more or less than what we see right now. I think all it would be is that it's going to take some, and there's going to be a societal shift that has to happen, because there are people that are at first going to be like, haha, screw this, I don't have to work.
yeah.
But what's going to happen is people are going to get bored out of their freaking minds and want to do something, even those folks.
The way that I inherently would like a UBI system to work is because I actually think a UBI is very inefficient when it works on a national level. I think a UBI implemented on a local level would be a far more efficient thing. Because like let's talk about like Andrew Yang's $1,000. $1,000 in New York means something very different from $1,000 in like Arizona.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly one of the things I was looking at with that. And you could do you could even use green energy as a means to spur
Yeah,
you know that economic planning. How much are we generating through green energy, and how much did our green energy provide energy to other partners that we're able to sell that energy to, or what have you. And then
that's what
through
I was
that,
so that's what I was so confused by when I was on the Hans panel because we had all these like right wingers talking about how they wanted everyone to move to these like few cities and like everyone to just live in like these highly concentrated areas where in like where no one else would like live, you know?
hmm
And like I was so confused because usually that's like I wouldn't say that's a position that they'd want to take. Like one of the big reasons like against that is most of the big cities in the country are on the coasts. When climate change actually happens, all those cities are going to go through massive changes. We see what happens when a single hurricane comes through New York.
yeah, that's
So
that's
like,
that's ridiculous. Why would we concentrate everybody in a few places like that? Environmentally, you're right. We're not in a place where that's sound. Like, holy shit, dude. Like, you'd be putting everybody in the freaking ocean. Yeah, let's move everybody to Louisiana.
but like when we're talking about like where money means something different in different places, like obviously that's true, but like you're not going to see like it was so confusing to me because like they're advocating for hey if it's cheaper why doesn't everyone move to like small areas where it's not expensive and then like you know what's going to happen if everyone moves to these areas
They're not
you're
going to be
gonna
small areas anymore. See how that works, guys? Come on, two and two.
uh, but yeah there's like so many and like that's one of the big things and like objectively and like this I'll advocate for this objectively the future of America is in big cities. I can't like disagree with that, but I don't we need to like be able to curtail these problems uh on a wide level and I would very much like it if we could make it easier to live in these like less populated districts.
Yeah, I think we really also, you know, if memory serves me correct, there are studies that show that people that live in some of these bigger cities, because of the industrial waste and the industrial pollution, they do have a
Yeah.
lot of health problems, lung problems specifically. And so that's something we have to take into account. Yeah, we can do that. We can choose to,
Hmm.
build up instead of out, and we can live in, major metropolises, but we got to clean our environment up in order for that to be sustainable for everybody.
I think like it's a balance because like I'm personally and like I don't know your opinion on this. I'm personally thinking that it's too late for us to like truly fix the environment. I think we're gonna see some major consequences of all of our actions, like in down 40, 50 years. And that's why like I would advocate like I don't know if I would advocate for like like everyone moving to these larger cities otherwise, but I hate the idea that like we move everyone to New York to Florida to Texas to California and all of a sudden the coasts just disappear because we couldn't have stopped this from happening.
Yeah, yeah, true story. But
And because I would like cities if that was like the thing that we could avoid. If all cities like were in like middle America, I don't know if I would like hate the idea of these cities as much. But
but
that's like, such a terrifying thing.
well, I mean, you're always going to have those big cities because you need the ports. I mean, you need that. But I think what they could do is, I do think, incentivizing people to move to more middle America places, not just because it's cheaper to live there, but if they were able to, say, guarantee a certain quality of life, a certain social safety net.
Yeah, exactly. Like if we could have a local UBI system, something like that.
Exactly. especially in plain states where you could set up solar farms and stuff like that. There's plenty of room for it. You know,
I, the thing that I would like if I wanted to like truly incentivize, what I think we need is a large, like a major infrastructure bill to like bring up Middle America. I think that's like the big thing that we could do. You could also do potentially like a UBI incentivization. Because like right now, like, I find it so stupid because and like I love big cities for a lot of reasons. I think that like environmentally they're kind of not that great. But if we're trying to look at what they do to a populace, I think big cities they progressively when you're exposed to so much multiculturalism, they make you a much better person.
they are net positive
Yeah,
societally. Yeah, I will agree with that. Having cultural epicenters, and it was like what I was talking about before. People that kind of live out in the rural areas, they live in a bubble.
yeah.
And because of that, there isn't as much exposure to other cultures, and because of that you lack empathy with other cultures. It's easy to disconnect and not see somebody else as like a human, like, or not see somebody else as like on the same level as you, because you're not exposed to those types of people, or that cultural persuasion, or whatever it may be. And so
Hmm.
I think with a city, because you run into so many people of different, cultural, ideological, racial, ethnic backgrounds, and you tend naturally, because they're in your vicinity, to befriend these people, and to get close to these people. It's much harder to accept things like racism, sexism, homophobia, Islamophobia, xenophobia, things like that,
Yeah,
because these are people that you care about as well. They're entrenched in your community, and they've become as much a part of your life as anybody else. You know what I'm saying? And
it's a
so yeah, you disconnect a little bit with um, that isolationist ideology, and it's easier to embrace different
yeah.
cultures. I think, in to that end, I think globally that helps too, because once you do it on the national level like that, then you have a lot more global awareness, and you tend to care even about what's happening in other countries a bit more, and have more of an interest and understand, to look at things with a little bit more context, because you may have a Palestinian neighbor, and you may have a shop owner down the street that you go that's a Israeli Jewish person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so you have to educate yourself more. You have to um, step in a little bit more into understanding others, and yeah, I think that's something that it's an important part of society. It's an important part of a rounded life. You know what I mean?
Like that's one of the like, and what I would really like to see is I want to see like here one of the biggest cities that's no longer a city that like we could push towards, like the capital. Like let me look. Let me forget. I forgot what this is. Oklahoma City. I was trying to remember what the capital of Oklahoma was, but it's just fucking Oklahoma City. Um, Oklahoma City used to be one of the biggest cities in the United States because of the railroad. Back in like when we majorly used the railroad, it was a booming city. It was actually it was a very large cultural site because that's where jazz was. There's a large jazz scene there because it was easy to move around
Mm-hmm.
from different areas in Oklahoma City. But since we moved away from using railroads as much, it's shrunken a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love if we see I don't know how we can incentivize it enough. But I think the major thing we need to see is we need to see a large building of cities in these areas, and like your Oklahoma cities and your like. I would love to see because and the other thing, this is also going to help us electorally. If we do a large push of moving towards places like Nebraska, places like Oklahoma, places like the Dakotas, we're going to start seeing them turn more blue as well.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. That's absolutely true. And I've often thought like there should be a movement just to encourage people, that are to
Mm-hmm.
the left, to move into these areas, Because if you think about it, that's what, we're going to bring up his name again. Sorry. That's what Bernie Sanders did. He moved into a rural area that was traditionally pretty Republican,
Yeah.
pretty
Whitest,
right, you know.
whitest state on earth.
What's that?
It's the whitest state in the United States.
Yeah, and he was able to sway them uh, completely change the direction of the state. I mean, and
And that's actually one of the reasons that I like this idea is because it's something that we can do absent of electoralism. It's one of the few things that we can like. It'll help electoralism, but if we do a large push to move to these Middle America areas, I might do it. I don't know. I can't. I'm definitely gonna move away from Florida. I really like the idea of moving to DC,
yeah.
but I'm not sure where I'm gonna go. But if I like, I might move to one of these Middle America areas because it's one of the few things that we could like do to truly affect how our society works without needing to go through electorally.
Oh yeah, big time. You have that steady influence, and if you can get like a group of people, that are willing to do that, you can shape policy real quick. You can start on the local level. The towns are much smaller, easier to get into, run for, office and things like that. You know, even on a base level like that, like, you could be Mayor Sen, of Podunkville, Nebraska or some shit, and like turn it
Um,
into like a total like socialist co-op utopia,
oh yeah,
run the whole experiment there.
that's something that we should also like take note of from like we kind of have the advantage because we have the ability to take over the Democratic Party, right? Uh, what we've largely done is we have like the ability to supplant what the Democratic Party currently is. Like let's say we were like let's take a look at libertarians again. Libertarians do not have the ability to capsize the Republican Party. They don't have any like physical people enough to like push for their goals like in within the Republican Party, which is the closest thing to their ideas, I guess.
Right,
So
right.
what you see them doing is you'll see massive clumps of libertarians in specific states. Take a look at New Hampshire. New Hampshire has a massive libertarian movement because a lot of libertarians decided that they were going to get up and they're going to push for their goals in this libertarian city. And like I think that you can see the influence that not that like the libertarians are majorly successful because of this, but like let's say we do a large push. Like I'll take Oklahoma. Actually, how big is Oklahoma? How uh, big